Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to a Fresh Story podcast with Olivia and Jenny. We are digging into families this season because we are a little bit obsessed with how family structures happen and occur
Very
and are built.
nosy.
We're nosy. We're yentas. What can we say? And so we have Elizabeth here today. Elizabeth, we connected on Threads, I believe.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. So Elizabeth, can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Well, my name's Elizabeth. I am a mom. I live in the mountains of Colorado. And in addition to my, job that I do to earn money, my main passion is writing. So I'm currently working on writing my memoir. And I also have a writing themed podcast. So I'm like you guys. I love asking people questions. I love trying to figure out the story behind the story because there's always so many layers to things.
Always,
Love
especially when you talk about families, right? So, yeah, that being said, we're going to sit back and get a cup of coffee. Why don't you start telling us about how you created your family, Elizabeth?
Yeah, sure. So it was certainly a journey for me. So at the time that had decided to grow my family, I was married to my then wife. And for a homosexual couple, it's a bit different in order to go through the process. There's sort of like not as many options, right?
Right.
And that system is really not built for us.
Yeah.
So I was constantly getting frustrated with all these requirements that made sense for like heteronormative couples, but made no sense for us to have to go through. Like I remember at one of the clinics we used, they required us to go to a counseling session before and have this counselor sign off on our ability to have a kid because we were using donor sperm. And while I understand the bigger picture of, say, there's a husband and a wife and you're using donor sperm, is that husband going to be as invested in that child?
Right.
And that's the counselor's job to make sure that, they've had those conversations and that that person really is on board with that decision. But that's the default for us. Like,
Right.
of course we
There's
fully
no
understand.
husband to be upset.
No, exactly. Like, clearly we had already negotiated the who's going to carry, who's going to do, whatever. And so it just felt like a lot of red tape that made no sense.
Yeah.
Or like, the admissions forms where it's like, have you been trying to conceive naturally for at least a year?
You're like, yeah,
No.
and we're shocked.
Well, I
Not working. What's
Right.
going on?
I have a question. Wait, I have a question though for Elizabeth. For lesbian couples, let's say, the decision to have a baby, right? For gay couples too, it has to be very intentional, right? Is that something that you talked about when you met? Is that something that you did you make a decision like, okay, this year we're going to start going to fertility clinics? Like, how does that conversation happen?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it has to be so intentional because there's so much, that there's going to be so much buildup, like
Right.
a lot of lead up in that process. I mean, when you look at the stats for any of the procedures, whether you use IUI or IVF, I mean, it can take, for one, quite a chunk of money, but also a lot of time. So we had discussed the desire to have children while we were dating, and we were both sort of on the fence about it. I knew that if we did at some point decide, I would be the one carrying. She was older than me. She had some underlying health issues. It just made natural sense. And so we had already kind of covered that territory, but then our relationship hit some rocky points. And there were times when I really didn't think we would have a kid. I just wasn't ready to bring a kid into a relationship that I didn't feel was super solid. But we eventually got to a point where I felt much more secure. And a lot of people talk about just that like flip of the switch where suddenly you're like, oh yeah, this is what I really want.
Right.
Some of that I think had to do with the stress of my job. I had transitioned from working at one place to another, and that relief of that stress really helped me feel like, oh, we're actually growing something here. This is a great opportunity. And interestingly enough, we actually started the process at a clinic when we were living in North Carolina. I did one round of IUI, which is intrauterine insertion. So that's using the donor sperm They put it in a catheter and basically insert it all the way into my uterus.
Okay.
So you have a higher chance than just the standard, way that you would do like the turkey baster method, right?
Right. But it's still not as invasive as like IVF or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, right. Okay.
At that point in that first round, I did use drugs in order to induce the ovulation so that it would be on like the perfect timing, which that's an optional thing. And to be frank, that shot made me insane.
Yeah,
Like
people say.
I hated the way I felt. So I said, if we have to do this again, I'm doing it naturally. I'll just time my ovulation. I'm not going to do it that way. But during the course of having had that procedure and gone through all the red tape in order to, get signed off and get the donor sperm and all of that, I ended up realizing that I needed to leave that job. I was at the interview, or I think it was like an hour before my interview for a new job in Minnesota when I got my period and realized that procedure hadn't worked. So that really put like a pin in the family growing process until we could figure out where we were moving. I did end up getting that job. We did end up moving to Minnesota. But then I had to wait, because now we're in a new place. Now I have a new job. Luckily, they offered 6 paid weeks of parental leave as long as you'd worked there for a year. So that kind of was our new timeline, was based off of qualifying for that paid leave.
Right.
So we knew we had a little bit of time, and once we rented for a little while we were there, and once we bought a house there, then it was like the next step was, okay, get up with the clinics, start going through the process. And we had to go through all the red tape again. It wasn't even just like, hey, see our previous medical records from North Carolina. They wanted to do, each clinic wanted to do everything again, all the testing. They did accept my previous genetic testing, but I think that was only because their clinic didn't require it.
Okay.
Like your genetics aren't going to change.
Yeah, luckily. Because we had already compared, my genetics to the donor sperm's genetics to make sure there wasn't anything egregious that we would need to be concerned about. But yeah, it was definitely quite a process.
That donor sperm, the physical like canisters of the donor sperm, they were in North Carolina. Where were they stored? Do you store it or do they store it?
So we were using a sperm bank in Seattle. So they would stay in Seattle until we
you
paid,
needed them and they would send it.
For the shipping alone was something like, I think the sperm was like $800, but then the shipping was another $200. They would send it in this, like, I don't know. I never saw the tanks, but they describe it as this like nitrogen gas filled cold tank. And you had to time it. The timing was the most stressful thing because you had to time the shipment of that to your clinic. You had to time the appointment and your ovulation. I was so frustrated that like I hadn't been educated as a woman about how to understand my cycle prior to that process.
Yeah.
And when friends ask me for advice about any of this, I always say, start tracking as soon as you know that this is potentially something you want to do down the road, because I was so frustrated since I wasn't using the medication to induce ovulation, like making sure I timed it right. And I was in a small town in Minnesota, so the closest clinic was in Fargo, which was a 2-hour drive away. So it was a big commitment of like having to suddenly take a day off of work when that strip turns purple and it's a sign that you're ovulating and you just go.
That's a lot. I was going to say, I think things like that, I live in Scotland and I came here on a fiance visa. I'm on a spousal visa now. And the experience I had with it, which sounds like the experience you were having, which was that the whole experience is kind of this blunt instrument. And it's not like specified for you. And it's very scary to go through a process where you're having to deal with this blunt instrument. And you're like, that doesn't apply to me, but are you going to hold it against me because it doesn't apply to me? And is this like a red tape situation where it's like, you're so strict about it? And so it just like adds another layer of stress to the whole experience of pregnancy, which is stressful in and of itself.
I have a question, Elizabeth. Maybe, I don't know if you know the answer to this, and maybe this is ignorant of me. I'm assuming this was all very expensive, right? So every step of this process. What do like lesbian couples do, for example, that don't have money but do want to have a baby?
Crowdfunding. Yeah. So I know a couple here locally where I live now, who had a GoFundMe page.
Yeah.
Their insurance covered a portion of it, but they were having to do a more complex procedure where they were needing to pull the eggs from one of the moms and and then do IVF, which is way more expensive, and then implant it into the other. And they were actually going to go do it, I believe, in Mexico because of the cost and everything and the type of procedure they needed. But they were crowdfunding, I think it was like 30 to 50% of it.
Wow.
Which, of course, I really appreciated that it wasn't like, oh, I'm looking for 100% of the funding for this from other people.
Right.
Like, they had their own like savings they were putting in. There was some medical coverage for, I think, a portion of that procedure, and then the rest they crowdfunded.
Wow. So how did you pick the sperm donor?
So we chose the sperm donor based off of my wife's physical characteristics. Since we were going to use my egg,
Love that.
then we wanted our child to be representative of the both of us as closely as we could. So we used, her Dutch heritage, her height, her blue eyes, and then we wanted to have like an open donor in the sense that when any offspring we have from that donor, they could find out the identity once they turn 18. We didn't want to take that choice away from our child. So that limited us down, once we did that search at that particular sperm clinic, then it limited us to 2 people.
Wow.
So then we looked at the genetic screening to see if there was anything. We read the profiles. There was like a couple of other features that you could pay for, which we did, which was an employee's sort of statement about this person, some childhood photos of the individual, and some like deeper family medical history and stuff like that. So we did that. But from the profile of the donor we chose, there were so many similarities between just their interests and my wife's interests, plus all the physical characteristics that we felt really drawn to that individual.
Yeah.
They had already had, I think, a handful of successful live births from their sperm. So that was, and there was an option for siblings if we chose to do that. And so all of those were reasons why we felt strongly about using that particular sperm. So when we moved our process from North Carolina to Minnesota, we didn't have to go back through the process of choosing the donor. We just
so you're in Minnesota and you're starting again with this new clinic. And what happens next?
So that's where we had to do all the STI, testing on both of us again, and all the intake forms and the doctor visits and the ultrasounds of my uterus to make sure it was suitable in a suitable environment. And then it was that clinic that required the sign off from the counselor. And so we had to go through that, counseling session as well.
Wow. Okay. So then do you get a baby from this, or when was your daughter born?
Yeah. So it took us 2 rounds.
Okay.
Once we did it with that clinic.
Okay.
And ladies, I swear, I did not think the second round had worked because of those ovulation sticks. So like I said, I was trying to carefully time it.
Right.
So I waited until I got that purple line that indicated, and it's a color change thing. So there's different degrees of purple, right?
Yeah.
And you only have this certain window, and the sperm can only live for so long. And so I jumped on it as soon as, I had that purple line. I'm like, okay, we need to schedule this. Let's go. We went, we did the insemination. And then I kept peeing on the ovulation sticks I had just to see if I'd caught it right. And they kept getting darker. And I was like, oh no, I did it too early. The sperm's going to die before the egg is actually ready. And like, this was a lost cause. So I told everyone, because of course, when you're doing it this way, everyone knows. So there's like a whole lot more pressure, people checking in on you. Like, did it work? Did it work? We're so excited. And it's like that stress of having to like keep everyone updated of like, oh, it didn't work. It's like, it's not just your own news. It becomes everyone's news.
Yeah.
But that time I had already told everyone like, no, I missed it. Like I guess I learned, from these sticks that I've got to wait even longer. And that was where my frustration with the whole timing thing and educating people on their timing really came in. So we were driving back from visiting my wife's family in Michigan when I realized I hadn't gotten my period yet, and I also hadn't seen any of the standard, like,
Yeah.
run up to my period, right? I didn't really have any period symptoms, and I was like, "Oh my god, what if it did work?" And so once we got back home, I took a test, and then it was positive, and so it was actually really great that time to have thought that it didn't work,
Yeah.
because in the previous month where I was just amped every day looking for signs like, "Ooh, I think I'm getting some tenderness in my breast. I must be pregnant. Oh, my heart rate's high. I must be pregnant." And then that let down when you finally take that test or get your period. I'm so grateful that, one, it took us basically 3 rounds, and also that I wasn't, like, super anticipating it. I'm sure some of that just calmness I had about it having not worked really helped in my favor.
So you did IUI all 3 rounds?
Mhm.
So just so everybody's clear, so every time you would what was the process? So you would, like, pee on the stick, it would turn purple. Would you have the sperm already in hand, or then they ship it within 24 hours or something?
So, once we knew that we were gonna try that month, I would go ahead and schedule the shipment for around the time that I thought I would be ovulating.
Oh my
Luckily, the
god.
clinics have the right sort of things to, like, keep it cold, to do what they need to do. They do a sperm wash themselves, so you have to give them time to do that. So I think usually the sperm was recommended to be there within a week before you thought you were gonna need to use it.
It's a lot of ifs, right? There's a lot of ifs there.
And it's assuming that your cycle is very regular and, like,
Mhm.
many women's aren't. Like,
Mhm.
and in a healthy way, just, like, kind of irregular and random, so
Right, and then so you had to pay every time to get the sperm sent, right? To
Mhm.
get a new vial of sperm, get the shipment. You had to pay to go to the doctor and get it, I would assume, every time. I'm
Mhm.
sure even with health insurance, right, like, still you have to pay something.
Yeah, my insurance didn't cover any of the procedure or anything, so between the sperm and the procedure, and then all the fees of, like, the counselor and the screening and whatever, we were usually looking at about $2,000 per try.
Okay.
It was a little bit less on that 3rd try because that was, like, the 2nd try at the same clinic, so some of that upfront cost wasn't carried over to that one, so it might have been more closer to, like, 1,500, but it was significant enough that we had already decided that if it didn't take in October, we were going to take the holidays off, we were going to have to save more money, and we would readdress our plans in, like, January or February.
Right.
Yeah.
It adds up. So you get pregnant, you're in Minnesota.
Mhm.
What is your pregnancy like?
It was harder than I thought it would be.
Mm.
Yeah.
I had morning sickness through week 16, and I was still working full time, of course, and I was just very aware of all the sensations in my body.
Yeah.
There were parts of it that were really cool. I'm kind of a scientist by nature, and so I loved learning about the whole process, and I was so shocked as I went through this process of, like, how hard it is to get pregnant, like, biologically, like, that window is
Yeah.
so small. It's
Yeah.
amazing the fear we get instilled in us as kids. Like, "You're gonna get pregnant immediately."
Yep. Yep.
And then we put it off to the point where it's, like, really hard.
Yeah.
You're like, "I'm paying
Yeah.
$2,000 a pop
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
try and hoping and wishing and peeing on sticks." Yeah, so the
Yeah.
pregnancy was tough, and then when did your daughter come and meet you?
So she was born at the end of June. We did a home birth.
Ooh.
I had, like, a blow up water pool thing,
Uh-huh.
and the birth process was phenomenal. I could not have asked for a smoother experience,
Hmm.
especially as a first time mom. So we had used a midwife
Mhm.
throughout our care, our prenatal care. We had only done the one required sort of biomarker screening,
Mhm.
at 20 weeks, the ultrasound, but we didn't wanna know the gender
Mhm.
of the
Mm.
baby, the sex of the baby, and so I'm so glad we chose to do that because it was such a sweet surprise at the end
Yeah.
Mhm.
to be able to finally be like, "Oh my gosh, this baby's here. Look at all this hair. Oh,
Mhm.
it's a girl." It was just
Yeah.
so much excitement. Everyone was so excited to figure out if it was a boy or a girl and then to
Mhm.
learn whatever name we had picked. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
um yeah, so that part of the process was great. But I had already told my wife around probably week 30 that I was not going to do it again. Like that we were going to be one and done, that we needed to savor every last bit of, the pregnancy experience and all of the firsts with a new baby, because I really didn't feel like I would be capable of doing that again.
Yeah.
And then the postpartum experience was tough as well.
Yeah.
Those sleepless nights, the mental fog, just the hormones up and down. There were times I was really not in a good place. So I definitely continued to feel like I cannot do that again.
Yeah. So, not that it's very common after a baby that a marriage changes. And I feel like we don't talk a lot about gay couples and having kids and domestic equity and marriage. How did your marriage change after your daughter was born?
For a while, it felt improved.
Mm.
So, because I was the one working full time, it was actually my wife that stayed home with Ember. She was a student at the time. She was in school getting an additional degree. So we had worked it out where I was working 3 10-hour days, and I was able to keep my health insurance working at that level. The lab allowed that for, I think, 6 months after returning to work. So I didn't have to go immediately back to 40 hours a week. And she consolidated her classes to the 2 days that I was off. But those 3 days, she was home with the baby. I was pumping at work. She was feeding the bottles. We divided up the nighttime sleep. I was nursing, so there was still a brunt of it that fell on me. But we were able to develop a system where I would nurse Ember at about 9 o'clock at night. And then I would go upstairs to a guest room, put in earplugs, set an alarm for 1 a.m., and I would sleep for 4 hours. And in that time, she was responsible for anything that happened. We knew that the baby could make it until that 1 a.m. feeding. And then at 1 a.m., we would switch spots. Then I would be back on baby duty, and she would nurse like 1 a.m., 2:30, 4:30.
Yeah.
But I at least had that 4 hours of sleep. And then my wife got the other chunk of sleep. And so that's one of the ways that we worked that out. So it certainly felt more equitable than what you would typically see in like a male-female dynamic in those early months. Eventually, I ended up leaving the job in Minnesota. When that happened, I became the stay-at-home mom. She got the job, and then the dynamic was totally your standard, like everything falls on me. Appointment scheduling falls on me. Meal planning falls on me.
Yeah.
Play dates, all of it, becomes my job as a stay-at-home mom. So that it looked much more traditional.
How old was Ember when that happened?
She was 2.
Okay.
And
a lot. A 2-year-old at home.
Yeah.
How did that affect your marriage?
It was rough.
Yeah.
It was rough. I felt really unappreciated. I felt like too much of it was falling on me. I felt like when I was the one working full time that I had continued to pull my weight in the household. And now it felt like, now that we had sort of flip-flop roles and she was going to go make her career and find her time to shine finally, and I was taking the step back, I didn't feel like it was balanced at all.
Yeah.
And so it got really rocky, and I think it was about a year and a half later, we got separated, and now we're divorced. So now we have a totally different dynamic. Now we co-parent together, which even going through the divorce process with a kid, like, again, it's another system that's not made for lesbian couples, not made for gay couples.
Right.
But we navigated that just as we did, all the other processes of family and what that looks like.
Now, how does
Luckily,
that work?
in Minnesota, they do allow for both parents to be on the birth certificate. So there wasn't an issue with
That's what I was going to ask.
her having to adopt our kid or anything like that. Like, she was listed as the second parent on the birth certificate.
Okay. Literally, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Okay. So what were the differences in the divorce process? I mean, not that you've gotten divorced from a man, but, from what you know about divorce, like, what would you say? Because I think that's a fascinating perspective that maybe wasn't set up for, a family like yours.
Well, for one, like, one of the required legal questions is whether you are currently pregnant,
Mm.
like,
Yeah.
it's like,
Interesting.
are you like, could this person, like, do you currently have an unborn baby that this
Yeah.
person could be the parent of and
Oh.
all this kind of stuff, and yeah, and I mean, really, for the most part, we just did everything 50-50.
Mhm.
We Even though there was some of that discrepancy of, her having a career and me being,
Yeah,
uh,
home.
not generating an income outside of the house, um, I don't know what to really say about it.
Yeah.
We treated it very amicably, but most of that, at least on my part, was because I really wanted to preserve
Mhm.
our working dynamic.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So there are some ways that I really do think I got the short end of the stick being the stay-at-home parent.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And even now, I'm still responsible for the bulk of the childcare. So my career opportunities are really limited. I work part-time with the school system because I need a schedule that's
Yep.
on the school
Yeah.
calendar. I need summers off. We have a 4-day school week here, so I need
Wow.
Fridays off. What other job would I be able to get
Right.
Right.
that allows me Fridays and summers off?
Yeah, that's really, I know from talking to a lot of women who were stay-at-home moms through divorce, that is the number one job they get is at the school system.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you're not in Minnesota now, though?
No, we moved to Colorado. When I left
Okay.
the job there at the lab,
Got
So
it.
you all 3 moved
we
to Colorado.
we all packed up, we moved to Colorado. Um, she pursued her, like, nursing degree
Mm.
dreams, so that seemed like a great opportunity to be able to pour into her career ambitions since she
Mhm.
had sort of taken a back seat throughout those job changes for me and the family growing and all of
Mhm.
that. I was very willing to step back and just be the support person as she pursued some of her dreams.
Right. Right. So what would you say to somebody listening to this who is gay or lesbian and thinking about starting a family? What would be some words of encouragement that you could impart to them?
There are so many options now. I mean, this is no longer something that's limited to people with celebrity level
Yeah.
money. This is no longer something that is, like, weird, or there's not a lot of people who have experience with it. A lot of couples have to use some form
Yeah.
of, assistance when it comes to fertility, whether that's simply medication or lifestyle changes or whatever. There's so many resources out there. And while some of the paperwork is a bit outdated, maybe they've improved it over the last 5 years, but while some of that's outdated, I really didn't get too much sense of, um, judgment or issues with the actual
Yeah.
practitioners. I think they are very accustomed to working with gay and lesbian
Mhm.
couples,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and nowadays, more of the insurance is covering some of that
Mhm.
stuff.
Mhm.
Right.
Sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating because sometimes it's limited to only if you can show a fertility issue
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
versus I
Right.
don't have a
I
fertility
have a
issue. I
fertility issue.
just
There's
right,
Right.
there's no
right,
Right.
other way. It's not gonna happen. We'll keep trying, but it's not gonna happen. Can you
right.
tell us a little bit about what your life looks like now with Ember? What your family
Uh,
looks like now?
yeah, so family has really changed. So now I am dating a man. We have been together for it'll be almost 2 years.
Mhm.
And Ember still splits her time 50-50,
Mhm.
but my ex-wife lives a tenth of a mile down the road from me,
Okay.
and
Love
we live
that.
in a small town, so we work really hard to make sure that all 3 of us as sort of parental figures are there
Mhm.
to support her. So, when she had soccer games this fall, all 3 of us were sitting on the sidelines
Yeah.
together.
Love that.
I make sure to include my ex in the typical, like, family events, so when we go to the pumpkin patch each year,
Mhm.
it's my ex-wife and I taking Ember
I love
because
that.
it's important to Ember. So we've found a way to kind of put our own feelings and history aside and try our best to really keep Ember in the forefront. And we always had, shared goals and values when it came to what we wanted for our children. And so we really rely on that to keep us kind of focused. Like, we had very divergent views of, like, she wanted to buy a house. I really did not want to. She wanted to get a dog. She wanted to move. She wanted to do tons of different things that I was not comfortable with. And now she gets to do them.
Yeah.
And now I'm freed up to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And
you still get to raise Ember with the shared values that you have. That's amazing. I love that.
Exactly. I love that. What's your favorite part of being a mom?
Oh, gosh. Just getting to watch all of the, like, developmental changes. It's so funny how
Scientists.
every age becomes my favorite age.
Yeah.
When she was little, I'm like, oh, this is my favorite. And then she could do something new. And I'm like, oh, this is my favorite.
Yeah.
And now that she's nearly 6, it's like the conversations we get to have, the way I get to see how her brain works. I'm like, this is so fun. This is my favorite.
Yeah.
I think it just keeps going like that. And that's the best. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Where can people follow you and your writing and everything you're doing, Elizabeth?
Great question. So mostly I'm on Instagram and Threads at @ewilsonwrites. And so much of this story from that move to Minnesota all the way up till basically last year is chronicled in my memoir. So I'm on the final pass of editing of this memoir. Hope to have it out by early next spring. So if any of this, topic or conversation or the different things I went through, like, resonates with people, I would love a follow so you can stay updated on where that book is at, because I go into way more detail there.
Amazing. We cannot wait to read it.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Thank you so much for being honest and authentic and sharing so that it, inspires and educates so many more people in their family creation process. Thanks, Elizabeth.